So much for follow through on my goals from the writing event in November. By the end of November, I'd written 32,849 words out of the 50,000 goal, and I just couldn't get any more in. I wrote 20 days out of 30, averaging about 1,000 words per day, and one day I even wrote over 5,000 words, but that's just not sustainable long term. I learned a few things about myself and about writing. The most important thing is that sitting down and writing something is more important than a specific word count or writing the perfect scene. The more I wrote, the more I could write, and the more time I spent thinking about writing, the less I could write. I noticed my writing craft got better the more that I wrote. The first things I wrote are very rough, but some of the last things I wrote sound pretty good. Obviously, it will all need editing and rewriting, but there was a noticeable difference over the month. I had a few moments of a writer's high when the flow of writing seemed to supersede my thoughts about it. It felt like the story was being written through me, but not really by me. Those occasions also made it difficult to come back to when I would try to write and not be able to get into that state again. Now that things are mostly back to normal, the boys are back in school, and there will be less fluctuation in life for a while, I will be writing more, though at a much slower rate. I have a goal of writing 800 words per workday. To write the whole first draft by April 15th, edit what I can, and then send it out to a developmental editor and then some beta readers in May or June, and then a line editor once the story is complete. My dream for it is to get published with a traditional publishing house, though I'm also looking at what it would take for either a hybrid publisher or to self-publish. I really want to take it as far down the traditional route by finding a literary agent first. It feels kind of wild to say that out loud, though. Anyway, that's where I am with the writing the book, and I look forward to writing more and hopefully getting it out into the world in the not-so-distant future. As I write a book with time travel and multiverses and family, I'm drawing on past ideas for scenes and characters and world events. This is pushing me to think deeper about those interconnections than I might otherwise have. Lots of childhood memories have been resurfacing, and there's a common thread among these remembrances. Through the struggles I had as a child, a teenager, and a young adulthood, I had a hope for the future. I had something to reach towards, something that kept me going. I had the idea that life would get better. Not necessarily easier, but better. Hard work and determination would get me a fulfilling life. And importantly, the society around me would also strive for a better world. And I thought I would be a part of that force for change for the betterment of humankind. And I thought everyone wanted human progress. We just disagreed on what that meant sometimes. I had my birthday recently, and birthdays for me are a time when I reflect on the last year, and sometimes much further back, and how that past may impact my future. What does the past year or more influence the next year of my life? It is also coincidentally near the beginning of the year, so it tends to be a time when we're all having similar thoughts. A few years ago, as I was approaching my 40th birthday, I was reflecting on my life and where I was, and I had a realization about the future that I had not previously recognized. When I was younger and saw the multitude of possibilities in front of me, I could be a robotics engineer or an artist or a musician or a pastor or a sustainable farmer or a professor or any number of other things I thought about. There was always a hoped-for future wherein I would eventually arrive and succeed at that career or endeavor or whatever. Before 40, I had worked in film and theater. I had owned and lost a recording studio, played in many bands, and toured the country a few times. I had managed restaurants, been in a church and worship leader, and learned everything I could about alternative farming techniques. I attempted a few times to create a sustainable, intentional community. I earned 2 bachelor's, 2 master's, and a PhD in philosophy and religion. And for a brief moment, I had my dream job as a professor and lost it just as quickly. I had made more pivots in 20 years than most people will make in a lifetime. And there was a blank wall in front of me. There was nothing more to attain. No more goals, no more hopes for the future. I looked back at my younger self and he just shrugged. He no longer had any more answers, no more pivots, no more dreams. It was a world marching further into fascism. There was technology enslaving mankind. The idea of human progress had come to a complete halt. Technological progress had replaced human progress. The idea of a future was obfuscated, not just mine, but for everyone. There was no longer a future, merely nostalgia. Whether it was looking back at the 90s and realizing we thought it was much better then, or for racists looking back to golden eras of the 1950s or even the 1850s, when white supremacy was the accepted and enforced view of white America, of all of America. We were no longer given a future to look forward to, only a past to mourn. Growing up reading and watching so much science fiction, I had swam in a world of possibilities, a world where technology enhanced human life, where scientific breakthroughs gave us greater clarity and understanding of our world. At around 7 years old, I saw a documentary that discussed some of the amazing technological advancements from research at MIT. These technologies were made to enhance human life in the world, and I was transfixed by their possibilities. It was hosted by Alan Alda, which is pretty funny to look back on now, but there were 3 technologies that really caught my imagination and would lead me to a love of robotic engineering. The first was a graduate researcher that had built computerized glasses. A heads-up display projected inside the screen of the lenses, and they wore a backpack-sized computer that were wired to the glasses, had a keyboard in one hand and a little camera. The user would load necessary data into the backpack, and the camera attached to one arm of the glasses could recognize faces and objects, and it could pull up relevant information on the heads-up display. The grad student showed how the camera identified Alan Alda's face connected to the data it had about him, and he read the information much like we might look up something on Wikipedia now. This sounds preposterous, but you have to remember this was filmed in the early 90s. There was very little in the way of the internet as we think of it now. It was mostly just interconnected databases in universities using FTP through very slow transmission lines. And cell phones were just barely becoming a little mainstream, but even then they were like huge bricks that you would just keep in the car because they were too burdensome to carry around. This predates smartphones by over 15 years and things like Google Glass by over 25. At that time, I was elated by the possibilities of being able to carry around a computer and use glasses with the screen, with the ability to augment human possibilities with technological ones. And the other 2 technologies that really stood out to me then were both robotic related. The first was the earliest research in what would become known as nanorobotics. At this time, they were about the size of a small spider or ant, and they hoped to use them for repair and maintenance work that were often very dangerous for humans. One example they discussed was to repair the outside of spaceships, since the robots would not need air and could use much smaller gripping mechanisms than a human in a big bulky suit. And working together with thousands of other bots, they could easily do the work in space or in very confined areas. They also suggested that we could eventually scale down these tiny robots to repair inside human bodies without needing open surgeries that risk the patient by opening them up to contaminants. And the other robotic research that really got my attention was research into human-machine interfaces, specifically for people who had limited mobility. Some of these were creating human-like hands for people who were born without the use of their hands or had lost the use, and the hand could move in a much more natural way than the much more basic prosthetics of the time. And they showed similar research for legs and feet as well. They even showed some of the earliest forms of speech to text and a mechanical manipulation for quadriplegics who may only have the use of their mouths or head gestures so that they could become more independent in their daily routines. These technologies showed little 7-year-old me that there was so much possibility for human flourishing with technology, and I wanted so bad to be a part of that progress. I spent the next 6 or 8 years believing that I could do that research and participate in technological progress that would benefit all mankind. And most of that has kind of happened, just not in the ways that I thought, and I haven't been a part of any of it. Corporations manipulated the technological advances into profit extraction and accumulation. They turned from benefiting humans to regulating humans. These advancements are now considered from the perspective of how humans can benefit the technology rather than how the technologies benefit us. One of my favorite movies as a kid was Dick Tracy, and the watch he had I thought was amazing. He could talk to others on a 2-way radio, like his watch was a phone. And this was originally created before we even had cordless landline phones, right? I couldn't wait until the day I could call my friends from my watch. And now that we have that technology, its primary goal is to track your every move, turning your life into data points that are sold to the highest bidder. used to track your movements and behaviors, to gauge how much they can leverage you for more money. You are the resource they're extracting. And importantly, to gauge your willingness to conform to society with the looming possibility of not just manipulation, but of surveillance and control. The watch, phone, glasses do not exist for your benefit. You exist for their benefit. The world we are given, the world we're being forced to take part in right now, has no endgame. This way of life has no future. It has consumption, destruction, and enclosure, but it doesn't have anything to aspire to. Any sort of goal for more, but you can only have more of something until there's nothing left of that thing. Authoritarians only have a vision of control. Even when they have control, they need to control the control. There's no vision in authoritarianism. There's no imagination, no creativity. So I'd like to apply a little imagination to the trajectory we're currently on. The PayPal mafia owns or has a controlling stake in every business in the, quote, Western world. There are multiple governmentless, sovereign, seasteading states in the oceans around the world for tax and law evasion. The Ellisons own all media companies and hold the data for every major military in the world. Every major decision is made by AI. All music, film, and television are made with AI. AI does all white-collar jobs. All labor laws have been eradicated, and those lucky enough to do work do hard manual labor in Amazon warehouses that now control all shipping and procurement. Wars are continually being fought by drones, controlled autonomously by Palantir's AI, drawing from the data in Oracle servers via Starlink satellites. Those servers and satellites are running the data for every side of the wars. Data centers have become town companies. The manual labor required to keep them operating is paid in company dollars. You shop at the company store and live in company housing. Laborers have Neuralink implants that track movements and dock pay based on productivity, as well as serve as distributed computing, alleviating data processing power for the servers. All water and electricity are owned by a few companies. Every home has meters at the faucets and outlets for your subscription fees and calculating your overages. All financial transactions are routed through your mandatory account on X. Everything electronic is smart and used for surveillance and dynamic pricing. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street own all housing. Everyone lives densely packed together to afford shelter, and homelessness is a crime punishable by lifetime servitude in a GeoCorp plantation. Every national border has an impenetrable wall patrolled by private militaries who have immunity to use lethal force. Less than 1,000 people own or control every single thing in our daily lives. This is the end game. This is the vision. Will it happen in 5 or 10 years? Probably not. Will it happen in 50 or 100 years? Yeah, I believe it's possible. If we continue to do nothing but passively consume, passively vote for one of the two people we're allowed to vote for, passively hope that someone will eventually come to save us. If we keep living with the status quo, if we let them control the narrative, they will control our lives. But we need a vision for the future. Fighting for the sake of fighting helps us feel better for a moment, and often we need that. But we need something to keep us going, a vision of a world flourishing with life and abundance. A world where technology works for all of us. A world where science discovers deep truths about our universe and brings greater knowledge and understanding to everyone. A world where medicine enhances human life. A world where systems of governance support their citizens. A world where we have eradicated white supremacy and pay reparations to Black and brown communities. A world where indigenous cultures have regained stewardship of the land. A world where women make their own choices about their bodies and lives. A world where child development is fostered individually as part of a community. A world where human and non-human communities thrive. As I write a book where I get to go back and rewrite a fictional version of my past and a fictional version of the world's future, I'm trying to hold on to the idea of hope. Not a hope for a vengeful God to wipe out the earth like I was told to as a teen in church, nor hope for a savior God to come and cleanse all our sins and make us new again, nor a hope for an earth mother goddess Gaia to save us through nature, nor a hope in any single person to make the world a better place. All I can do is remember what hope once felt like and push that into the future in my mind's eye. To believe that enough people will also remember what hope felt like and collectively make the world a better place. To dream again of a flourishing world, one that benefits human and non-human communities. So I want to leave you with this one question. What is the world you want to inhabit? No holds barred. Don't think about how we get there. Don't say it's not possible. Just think, what does a flourishing future look like to you? As I consider the world I hope to inhabit, partially for the book and partially for my sanity, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future. If you'd like to leave a comment, that would be cool, or tag me in an Instagram post or whatever. But at least think, what is the world that you want to inhabit?